Miniature Market has thousands of board games at discounted prices. Click the direct link below to see all of those discounted games. Hello my friends, today we're going to be in space, building ships at our starports, moving those ships around, battling others. We're also going to be sending agents out. Today we're taking a look at ARX. This is a space opera game that has an action selection mechanism similar to trick taking. So let me show you how this plays. I'll see you on the other side. In ARX, each of you are going to have a fleet of ships and some agents that are going to be placing around the planets and into cities and into cards. Now here's a 4-player game set up again, and these are the different planets and areas that you're going to be going into with your ships. The game is played over 3 to 5 chapters, and if someone has a certain amount of points depending on the player count at the end of a chapter, that player will win. Now these planets that we have cities in are going to give you resources. When you tax them, you also start with some resources. Now your resources are tracked on your board, among other things, and that'll be important for one of the main ways to score in the game. These are called ambitions. Up to 3 times per chapter, players are going to be able to claim ambitions or declare ambitions and take some of these like this. And this means that at the end of the chapter, if you have the most of these resources, you're going to get 2 points, 0 for second, or 3 and 2 for second place, 5 and 3. But as the game goes on, the smallest one's going to flip. So each chapter, things are going to get more and more advantageous to go after things, and points are going to get bigger and bigger as the game goes on. Other ambitions that will score your points are being a tyrant, like taking other players' agents captive, or taking other players' ships as trophies as you destroy them, or even other resources like this one, or like this one. So it's pretty simple. At the end of the round, whoever has the most or fulfilled this ambition the best is going to get the first or second place points respectively. Now turns go in clockwise order, and players have a hand of cards. Now these cards are going to have different suits, which are going to be different names of cards: mobilization, aggression, administration, and construction, but they're different suits if you see, and there's numbers between 1 and 7 if you're playing a 4-player game, for example. Now these cards, as they're played, is sort of like trick taking. Now the lead player will actually play a lead card like this, and this just denotes the led suit for the round. Now this is going to allow them to move or influence, and this tells them the amount of pips is how many times they can do those actions. Anywhere between 1 and 4 depending on the power of the card. So they can move or influence, for example. Now one of the important things about being the leader is you can declare an ambition. Now this is what allows you to take one of these and say, hey, this is going to score at the end of this round. Now everyone knows what they're fighting for. Once they do those actions, the next player clockwise is going to be able to go, and they might play a card. And if they play a card, they can play the same suit if the number's bigger. In this case, they're called surpassing that, and then they would take, in this case, only one of these actions there. Or you might decide to pivot, which is playing a different suit, and you get to take the action on the card that you played, but only one. So even though this says I normally take 2, I can only take one of these: tax, repair, or influence, because I did not follow suit. Or you can turn it face down, any card, and take one of the led actions. Those are sort of your 3 things there. Now initiative is big. Whoever plays if someone ends up playing a 7 and 4-player game, they'll end up taking this initiative. Or if a player burns a card underneath their card, they also can take the initiative. But once someone has sort of taken it, and they'll have it next round, they'll be the first player to go. Again, this is important because you get to lead next turn, and that's the only time you can declare the ambition. Now, interestingly enough about the ambitions, if you declare one, this makes this card a 0. And since you can only follow suit by having a higher number, this allows you to play lower cards if someone has declared ambition. So that's sort of the mechanisms of how the game goes, flows, and what you can play and what those do. So let's kind of go over what some of these actions do. Now, moving ships, you can move any amount from a planet for one action and move it adjacent. Like I could move these ones here, right? Or I could just move one of them. That's still one action. However, if you're moving from one of your starports, which is where you actually build ships, we'll talk about in a minute, this allows you to sort of catapult and move as far as you want until you hit a place where somebody else controls it. Controlling a place is if you have more fresh ships, ones standing up, because as they get damaged, they'll go down like that. So control is big, but if you're moving from a starport, it lets you move further through places that aren't controlled by somebody else. And doing that catapult also allows you to drop ships off on the way as well. Lots of flexibility. Now, influencing allows you to place one of your agents on one of these cards. Now, these cards are interesting because one of the actions is to secure. When you secure, if you have the most agents, you take this card, place it in front of you, and you take the people there as captives. Now, the captives are important because at the end of the round, if the tyrant ambition was selected, it's going to score, and then everybody will end up getting rid of all their captives. But the card's going to give you both a resource to use, but also an ability. Preludes basically allows you to sort of play actions. You can actually spend these resources when you play cards. Like I could spend this one to take the action of a lead card. I could spend this one to build a repair, which is doing some of the actions. So a lot of these allow you to do additional actions as you're playing cards, but you're spending resources which are really big in the game. Because right now I have one of each, because these count as a resource. You can only hold as many. Once I got another one here, I can't place another one until I get another city out. And again, another city out, it gives you more spots to give your, put resources. And if you do your last cities, you're actually going to score more points if you get all your cities out when you score for ambitions. And getting resources on those cards are important because, again, a lot of the ambitions have you needing the most of those. And there's only 5 resources of each type, and they're limited. So they get, held on to quite often. You also might be building ships, and you build those at any of your starports. You also might be taxing a city, which essentially is a city, assuming that you control it there, you can get the resource of that planet type. Now, when you're moving around, you're going to be trying to battle. These big lines make this and this not adjacent, and some parts of the border are not used depending on the player count. But when you're in a spot with somebody else, you can battle. Battling is pretty streamlined. Only attacker rolls 3 different types of dice. There's a safe one that either you're going to hit the opponent or do nothing. It's not going to possibly hurt you, and if you do damage someone, it goes like that. If you damage it again, you could remove it. This would do 2 damage to the opponent, but the fire hurts you. So you could say, I'm going to kill this one and then damage this one. Sometimes you'll get interceptions. And what this does is for every fresh ship, one standing up, that's how many damage you take. So this does a lot of damage, but you can get damage. This allows you to try to raid. Now this can actually hurt city here or like this, but it also can help when you're trying to steal things. See the key there? Now, if someone had rolled that against me, they would need 3 keys to steal this resource or 2 to steal this card from me, which also is a resource and possibly gives them ability. However, if you had a different resource, they might only be worth 1. Anytime you gain resources, you can sort of rearrange them to make them harder to steal. So there's a little bit of combat that way. And the last action you can possibly do is repair, and for each action you can flip over one of those, or if you're the blue player doing it, you can actually repair your buildings as well. Now, an interesting thing is, like, when you're hitting, you have to go through the ships first, and if there's no one there, you can hit the city. But sometimes you can hit the city directly, and if you end up damaging it and then destroying it, you cause outrage. Now, we would look at what this city produces. Now, that outrage, if I had this resource and the one the plant was making, I would lose these, and I would lose this as well. In addition, I'd have to put one of my agents here, and this means I cannot use any more of these resources to get an extra action as I'm playing cards, so it makes me more limited on what I can do throughout the game. And also, I'd be able to take any of the cards that has the defender's agents on there. In fact, I would take all of the agents, and those actually go towards the trophies, which again is another one of those ambitions. And you get to keep the card too. So you keep playing cards like this until everyone successfully passes. You'll score and go to the next chapter, and then again, when you get to those predetermined scoring spots at the end of a chapter, that's when you win. And remember that each round, the lowest one that hasn't been flipped yet will get flipped. So over the course of the rounds, the points get more and more. Whoever has the most at the end is the winner. And there's also 8 cards for an advanced game that you can play that gives you an asymmetrical setup and some asymmetrical abilities. And there's a mini expansion that comes with many more of these. All right, now before I get to the moment you've been waiting for, I wanted to let you know that Game Toppers upgrades every game you play, and they just launched their 4.5 Kickstarter, which will introduce the new Galactic, Mycroft, and Watson Game Toppers with interchangeable rail inlays, as well as new game mats, miniature gaming terrain packs, leg kit options, dining covers, accessories, and amazing package deals. Search for Game Toppers on Kickstarter or go to GameToppersLLC.com. All right, there so is ARX. Now I'm going to spend time to talk about what I liked about it, and then some of these concepts I'll also on the backside talk about what I didn't like as much about it. So first of all, trick-taking. I love trick-taking. I think it's interesting. I do like games that have some trick-taking elements that have become other games, like Jiraku's a great one. But generally speaking, the ones that have turned it into bigger games like Brian Boru and things like that, I hadn't liked as much. The shorter streamlined games that do like area control with trick-taking stuff, I have liked. So I was really interested in this. And I think the trick-taking concept here is very interesting. It's your action selection, essentially. I mean, you're not just caring about numbers, you're caring about the actions that are on those suits. And so if someone plays a specific card, and a suit, then you're either going to have to play that bigger number of the same suit above it to surpass them, Or pivot, playing a different offsuit, sort of sluffing, if you will, and taking one action or putting it face down, taking one. So you have some options there. None of the options except the first one tends to be a really good one because, hey, do I want to take one action or 3 or 4? Even if it's something you don't need to do right now, you probably should take the one that's 3 or 4 to set yourself up some other turn. But it's interesting. It was an interesting concept that comes through pretty well. There's some parts about that I don't like. I'll talk about a little bit later. But the trick taking is what sort of like made me want to see this game, and it is an interesting concept. The tension starts right away. They have these different setup cards, and it's like you're in each other's face, declaring ambitions. You're all right next to each other, kind of. You're not too far from each other. You're all going to be fighting for the same thing. So right away there's tension in the game, like first turn, basically, first round for sure. I like that there's different strategies for scoring. So 3 of them are different types of resources, right? Then you have the kinds where you're trying to take casualties or take the ships that you destroy. But then you have the ones that you're just sort of the agents that you're taking, and so you hold them captive. So different things. Am I going with resources? Am I going to go heavy on combating and captivating others? So I think that's interesting that you have different aspects that you're trying to score. Now, declaring the ambition is interesting because you can only declare it if you're the lead player. So going back to trick taking, you want to surpass it in lead because you want to do the ambition. But you also can, if you play a 7 in a 4-player game, you're gonna get that ambition. That you're gonna get the lead tokens, the initiative. So you could play the ambition. Or sometimes you're playing that card offsuit or any card face down on top of another card. You're burning a card to be able to get the initiative because that's when you can declare that ambition. Now the ambition is everything, right? It's how you score, but it also brings a lot of attention, right? Because if you're not far in the lead in something you're declaring ambition on, which most of the time you won't be, you might be doing pretty well in it, boom, boom, alarm bells go off, everybody knows what they're fighting over, especially if you pick the one with the highest score. So it's like you ringing the bell as to, hey, I am predicting this is what I'm going to do well at this round, and this is what I'm fighting for. Come get me. So it kind of rings the alarm bell, and I like that because it raises the tension and it gives everything going. The combat in this game is very streamlined. I don't even typically like a lot of combat in games. This one's, I like it. You pick one of the 3 dice. You're going to play it safe to hit. Are you going to really go aggressive where you might get hit more, where you might get intercepted? That's another strategy thing to think about. Or you're going to try to raid them and steal things from them and beat up their cities and stuff. I like that. Just selecting the dice is interesting, and it's just awesome. Roll the dice, 1 per every ship standing up, and you choose everything. Defender doesn't do anything. It's really streamlined. I really liked it. I wish more games that are like big epic games like that have combat streamlines like this. I think it was the most, and I don't typically like combat in games, but it was a part in this game that I thought was done the best, actually. It was super streamlined. I like that you have the powers and resources of the court cards. You're going to go to that card for the ability, or you're going to go there because the resources. The resources are very limited, right? There's only 5 of them, and once they're out and people are fighting for those objectives, you're going to have to go to those cards to get more of those. And so, interesting. You're fighting with those sort of area control, and you're trying to, bring them back at the right time. I like that you're able to use the resources as additional actions. So like, this resource is very limited. There's only 5 of them. But you know what? Someone's killing it over here. I'm not going to be fighting for this. I might as well use it and get this extra action, do something else that I want to do. I like that. It was very interesting. And when you destroy the cities, I like that because if you destroy someone's cities, it's sort of a trade-off because sure, you're hurting them, but you're causing outrage, which is now going to block that resource. You're going to lose all those resources from that player's planet. You're going to block being able to use that resource as an additional action later. So it hurts that person, but it also kind of hurts you too. So I thought that was sort of an interesting thing. But overall, I think the game was interesting with a lot of parts I did like. For me, there were parts of this game that I did not like. There were parts that people I played it with did not like. For me, for a game that's this long, by the way, I felt like the game was a little longer than advertised. On the box, it says 1-2 hours. In a 4-player game, you're not playing this in 2 hours. Not unless everybody has played it many times and everyone knows what they're doing. Sure, probably. But at least the rulebook says, hey, if it's your first game, it's going to be 45 minutes per player. 3-hour game. And your first game probably will go longer than that, especially if one person knows the rules, sure, 3 hours if you're teaching all new people. 3.5 if nobody knows the rules and you're kind of like, after the teacher, you're diving back in. But the cards themselves, what you're dealt in a longer game, it took like a longer game, which is typically more strategic, and it made it more tactical. Tactical in a sense that you almost felt handcuffed because you literally have to live with what you were dealt. It doesn't even matter if like the round before that you were working on resources, you scored something, you still have a decent amount of those, you want to do that thing again. Guess what? You get 6 cards in your hand and you do not have one icon for that ambition. And doesn't matter. You can take initiative. If someone else doesn't declare that ambition because you're so far ahead, you're not going to get it. The cards themselves, if you get stuck with like 2 suits of the 4 suits, you're going to be somewhat limited, especially if you're not getting the initiative. You know, do you need to bury a card to get the initiative so that you stay on suit longer, right? Because if not, players are playing those other 2 suits, or you have a bunch of low cards. What if you have only 2 suits and a lot of low cards? You're going to get hosed that round. Like, absolutely. You're going to have to play off suit often, which means you're going to take 1 action of the lead card or the card that you play, and somebody else is going to be like, I'm going to take 3 actions. I'll take 4 actions, and you're going to get destroyed. Now, over the course of the game, theoretically, that should even out, but it doesn't ever really seem to, and then also it's the biggest problem that I have with the game. It's the biggest problem others that I have played with this game have with the game. Is that your strategy basically is like your cards come, you might have been working on something else, tough. This round, you're just not going to be able to do it. Doesn't matter if you have a lead for that. You're not going to be able to score for it. You're not going to be able to make the ambition, and you're just hosed. And that can happen, and it has happened to many people multiple times, as I've seen in playing this game. So I feel like the luck of the draw, great, it's a card game. I think the luck of the draw is more unforgiving than it should be in a game that's this long. I feel like I made it more of a tactical game than a strategic game. That's a game that's this long. You're really thinking about what you're going to do this round, and you can't really look around ahead because you don't know what card you're going to have. Even if you're doing really good in that objective, it doesn't matter. If you don't get a card that has that ambition on there, you're not going to do well. If you don't have a lot of cards to different suits to choose from, you're not going to do as well. It's just what happens. And that was not quite as fun. The limited resources per player card I thought was weird. There's only 5 of them, but you have all 5 in a 4-player game, and it didn't seem like you use less and less. So that was interesting, where it's like super limited in a 4-player game. Like those resources get drawn up fast, and you're fighting for the cards. Where with less players, it doesn't happen as different. I thought that should have been changed a little bit by player count, unless I missed something in the rules. But then, so in general, it is that epic space opera, but. There's a lot of things I liked about it, but in the end, I end up finding myself and watching others find themselves frustrated with, you got to play the hand you got. And is taking 1 action ever going to be better than taking 3 or 4 that someone else gets to do? Usually not. And so you're really just trying to do the best you can with what you got. And I feel like the game plays more you than you play the game at sometimes. If you get given a bad hand in a round, it really hurts. And I don't typically compare games to other games, but like Last Light came out last year, and it is an epic feeling space opera that is played in less than half the time, better table presence, more streamlined. I really wanted to like Arcs because I love the trick-taking aspect of it, and there was a lot of that I did like. There's a lot of super clever things here, but in the end, it's long, it's unforgiving, and for me that doesn't play a lot of space games. I'm just going to play Last Light. That's just how I feel about it. But if you like those longer epic games and you don't mind having to basically change your plan and having to maybe have a round that really is terrible for you, hoping that you'll get a better draw next time. If you don't mind that, you like these longer epic games, you like to play longer games, then this might be one for you, and that is Arcs.